Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm the founder of the Empowered Grief Journey coaching and podcast platform. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be doing a mini podcast with one of the authors of my anthology that came out yesterday on November 23rd. The anthology is called The Empowered Grief Journey 23 Stories of Grief That Carved a New Path Forward. And today's author highlight is with Terri-Ann Russell. Her chapter is number 5 called Love Beyond the Veil, and it's a powerful story about her grief and loss she went through with her son Anthony and how she helps other people find ways to stay spiritually connected through the loss of their loved one. I'm really excited for her to share a little bit of the background of her story and the chapter with you guys. Before we get started, I'm going to share when you open up the book, you guys will see the front of her chapter just like this. And when you guys get done reading it, I want you to know you'll find a bio, her picture, and links to her website on the backside of that chapter. So if you guys get emotional pull from that, which I certainly did when I read this chapter about Anthony, reach out to her and connect with her. She's on a lot of social media pages, and she's also written some books, which I'll be asking about her later. So without further ado, Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Likewise, and I wish we could have connected more through the project because I really found a lot of movement when you and I podcasted initially. I was very much in beginning phases of my spiritual journey, and I gained so much wisdom talking to you through the podcasting we did. And when you wrote the chapter of the book too, I just felt such a spiritual connection and pull. And I feel like Anthony gave you so many gifts through that moment, as painful as that was. I feel like he's given you a beautiful gift.
He told me that too in the beginning, but I didn't want to believe it. How could you? Like, when I look back and I was so naive in my journey, and there's nothing like it. And I know you understand because you lost your son. There's no other pain that, a parent can experience like that. And it's so heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And early on, he would tell me that there would be beauty that would come from this pain. And I was like, there could possibly be no beauty that would come from this. So I laugh about it now because he still pops in once in a while and he's like, "Oh, do you get it now?"
I can't help but feel that same way like you described because, you're right. As lost parent to lost parent, losing a child, in my opinion, is the worst thing I've experienced in life. And it's not a grief that we get over and move on from. It just isn't. And we can never really erase that pain. But I think it's so powerful that we're able to write chapters, writing chapters in this book, let alone you've written several books about Anthony and honoring his legacy. And I think that, like he says to you about the beauty and loss, I can't help but feel that way with Caden in many ways. I shared with everybody yesterday on the live. I went to the store the other night and randomly glanced up when I was at the checkout, and there's this lion going like this and a smiley face with a pod. I just can't help but think that our loved ones send us signs, like you taught me in our podcast
Well, I
earlier.
have to show you something because so after we finished yesterday, because we were supposed to do this yesterday after the release party, and it didn't work out because that went too longer. But after I was on the release party, where is it? It's a I have it in my pictures. Here it is. Can you see
Where
that?
did you see that?
It just popped up randomly somewhere where I was on. I don't even know what it's a sponsored ad somewhere. And it
Oh,
says
that's
join the
funny.
pride.
That's we've created such a community in this project. I have a hard time with words of it, but it's such a beautiful thing that we all came together in such a powerful way in this book. And I wanted to ask you too, because I didn't get to yesterday, but what kind of signs does Anthony present to you on a
Oh, they've been crazy. So I've had 56 dreams with Anthony
56?
in 6 years. The first 2 years were the most. So in the first 2 years, I had 24 dreams. So it was every month I would have a dream about Anthony. And I just had a dream about him the other night. So I don't know if you know, but actually, when spirit comes in a dream, it's not an easy thing for them to do, but he seems to have perfected this. So spirit also has their own gifts that they use when they're in spirit. Not everybody can flicker their lights. Not everybody can come through in dreams. And so they have their own gifts that they use or that they're trying to learn more over there. So dreams is one way that Anthony connects with me. He sends me profound um, metaphoric, beautiful dreams. The second one, he always sends me a lot of hawks, eagles, owls. Owls are the most, but he likes to communicate with birds, big birds, not little birds, big birds. And the other way he always communicates is through hearing. So I can feel and I can hear him. One of the most beautiful things about my gifts is I'm very feeling. So I'm
Mm.
clairsentient. I'm also very empathic. So the feeling aspect for me is very easy. So when I feel someone enter, I can feel their energy. So I know it's my son. There's just a love that can't be described. And that's why I say after they pass, the love doesn't go away because he's not here in the physical. I felt him since the moment that he left.
I think that's such a powerful thing to share because I've talked to so many people that don't believe the way you and I do as far as spirituality goes, and I've had experiences like that, like you, where I've just said that this cannot be fake or unreal. It's something very out there, and I can't really put it in words half the time, but it's too real to not be real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let me give you one example quick. So we were going to live on the road after he passed. He guided us to sell our business to do everything. Now, I didn't think my husband would be on board, but my husband like jumped right on board. So that's another thing. I was like, it's crazy. But he kept showing me this woman that had this streak of gray hair in her hair, and I would meet her somewhere along my 1 year on the road. So I never really looked for her. I was like, okay, whatever, whenever it happens, it happens. Well, I meet this woman and her family. We spent 2 weeks together in Virginia at the time. She didn't have gray in her hair. So we're together the first couple of nights. And I'm like, Anthony told me I was supposed to meet somebody and they had gray in their hair. And she's like, I just dyed my hair. I have a streak of gray. And she pulls out a picture and here she is with this gray hair. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Whoa.
I'm still mind blown about the way that things work. So this was 2021. It was just about 2 years after he had passed.
That's incredible. And I do believe that our loved ones leave signs like that all the time for us. And
Yeah.
I think where some people get tripped up in the spiritual side of the world is that sometimes those signs aren't going to make, perfect sense, if you will. It's not going to fall in a certain order of things. It's going to be very random, very sporadic. Something's going to pull you, like you said about the woman with the gray hair. Something's going to just pull you a certain way to show you that message. And I think if we're very open, as you've taught me through the podcast we did together, that if you just leave yourself open and curiosity all the time, those signs tend to show themselves a lot easier to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And there's been so many like that from him. And I'm not the only one. Like people who read our book, they message me and they're like, I had this connection. I felt like Anthony was here. Did he like pizza? Or was this his favorite color? And things like this. And I'm like, yes, because I think he was here with me. And I'm always like, yes, that's him. Like, he curses a lot. So people may not know this, but in spirit, they are their personality, right? So my son, grew up in New York, New Jersey, so he cursed a lot. And this one woman, she's like, I don't know how to say this, but I just wanted you to know. I think I connected with him, but he said the F word a lot. So I'm like, well, that's my son. That's how I know that's my son. If you told me he said, something like the world is beautiful, and I wouldn't think that was him.
I think that's really amazing that he still carries those personality traits over in the spirit world. I've always been curious about that because I feel like I've had dreams of my grandfather since he passed, and it really shocks me how clear I can hear his voice sometimes when I'm doing
Yeah.
something. Like if I'm doing woodworking or I'm on my boat or whatever, I can always hear his voice in my ear going, now what is that? And it's in their same tone, their same register, and their same words they used when they were here. And so,
Yeah, and so this is other people that I don't even know, that don't even know Anthony, that have read the book and reached out to me because now they have had this connection. And, it's always amazing to me how that works because we're all connected, is what he's told me. You know, in reality, we are all connected. None of this happened by accident. Like, I believe, our sons brought us together and everybody in the group this was agreed upon way before we came into this life as Chris and Terri-Ann.
Well, that's what's so powerful about our spiritual journeys is that we plan our lives, by the way, before we even come here. We plan everything that happens to us. We agreed to lose our children. I don't even know why, by the way, because that's how I am here. I'm like, I don't know who signed up for that one. Definitely
Well,
wasn't
let me tell you. So in the
me.
beginning, he told me, like, I was like, why would I agree to something like this? And this is how I know, my son, he'll argue. He was like, not only did you agree, it was your idea.
Are you kidding me?
So in spirit, because we had lived other lives together, I had died and he had stayed behind. So in this life, I wanted to experience what that would be like. But I said, it's not the same thing as a mother and child. So I still argue with him now because I'm like, I don't know why I would have agreed to that or came up with that idea because it's still not the same thing.
Yeah, but it's interesting that we go through these experiences from that standpoint because I think the power that we showed in our book and you showed it in your chapter is that there is so much good that can come from these kind of losses and these kind of griefs. And had I not lost Caden, I never would have met you. I never would have gotten to know Anthony's story. We would never been a part of this project together. We also, by the way, would not have connected and helped all these people who are pre-reading this book right now. It would never have touched their lives. And so
Yeah.
it kind of puts you in this place, this weird, awkward balance of if I could have my kid back, I'd do it in a heartbeat. It wouldn't take me any question to say, yes, I want them back and I'll give up anything for that. But in the same breath, we sit there and say, there's so much to be grateful for what happened because now we're helping the world in such a powerful way. And it wouldn't have been had we not gone through those experiences.
Yeah. And I think every chapter shows such a love that really truly exists between people. You don't see that a lot in the world today. And so this love exists beyond our time and dimension, and it still exists even afterwards. And I think every chapter that you have in the book shows different relationships, right? They're all different stories. Some have lost parents, grandparents, pets, spouses. So everybody has experienced grief differently. I always say none of us are immune. None of us are going to never experience grief. At one time or another, we are going to experience loss. So I think the beauty of this book is it shows that there's so much love beyond the loss. You have to go through the loss. It's part of it. You can't bypass it and just get to the beauty, because had I not felt that pain and that suffering, I needed to experience that so that I could be this honest, compassionate, authentic, loving person that I am today. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm really glad that you said that because something that I see in the world today is we live in such a fast-paced, very instant gratification society, and when we don't have our expectations or our needs met right away, we fall apart very, very fast. And I think when you go through a loss like you and I did, and we lose a child, for example, it puts it so much in perspective of, you know what? Yes, I'm in traffic. I can wait 30 minutes. My life isn't over right now. Or if I'm in the checkout line and I just can't get there fast enough. That's okay. That's fine. It really teaches us what's really, valuable in our life versus what's not. And I think it's a perspective that we only find going through our grief, not around it or trying to avoid it, but going through it. And that's not always the easiest path. It's really not, but it's the one that gives us that perspective of love that you just described.
Yeah, and I think everybody can attest to this in the book. It's a balancing act, right? We still go through grief. It's not over. There are days like his birthday are particularly difficult for me, as you know. It's something that'll bring me to my knees sometimes, and it's just part of the process. I am who I am today because of the love that I shared with him, but I am also who I am today because of the grief that I've experienced after losing him. So those two have to exist simultaneously. That person who existed before doesn't exist anymore.
And I think that's what's beautiful about your chapter in particular is you show that fine balance between I'm going through grief, but I've got to move forward in life, and you show how you can be two things at once. And I think that's something I certainly struggled with for many years. The first 2 years after losing Kate, and I struggled to wrap my head around that. And this year, thanks to you and many people I met on my podcast, I'm finally getting to that place where I can realize that. But like you said, it's a fine line. It's really holding space for yourself to say, like on birthdays, it's going to be a hard day. I accept myself fully today that this is going to be a hard day. If I have a great day, I give myself space to enjoy that day because I don't know what tomorrow is going to be like.
Yeah. And that's the beauty. And you've learned too to say no. You've learned not to do things for other people because that's what's expected of you anymore, right? One of the biggest takeaways I shared a little yesterday was about the transformation that came from this was not only about going through grief, it was about where Terri-Ann was a people pleaser, where she said yes when she wanted to say no, where she let her boundaries be bypassed and, let other people run her life. So this beauty came, and I've had a hard life, hard. Anthony was the ultimate, but it's been a difficult life, and to still be here today and to be in a space where I'm able to share that love that came from such a loss, I think it's beautiful. And I want to thank you for bringing us all together to be able to share it together because there's power in numbers.
There is, and I think there's a lot of people out there that have not quite either gone through it as we have in many ways, or they just haven't given themselves permission to just be who they are in the moment and meet themselves where they're at. And that's what I think. So I said it from the start when I put this whole book project together because I just had this vision ruminating in my head. And I always said, this is bigger than me by myself. This is bigger than us collectively. And I think when you live in that space, something you said really powerful is that ability to say no. You stop being a people pleaser. You stop putting everybody's priorities over yourself. You learn that when you can take care of yourself and meet yourself where you need to be, that's where you can heal. That's where you can become strong. And more importantly, that's where you can fill your cup and you can help other people and be more of a service to this world with love and gratitude and kindness.
Absolutely.
So.
It's been a beautiful journey. I just have to tell you, it's been a beautiful journey of unraveling again.
Well, I'm very grateful for you to be part of it, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions. One of them is, what did this experience being in this book give to you, and what did you take away from rewriting the story about Anthony?
Wow, I learned more that I'm on this heart-led journey. I've always been very heart-centered, and every job that I've had has always been of service. But I've learned more about how this is a heart-led journey for me. And the more we heal, the more we share our story, the more it deepens, the more my healing deepens and my heart opens more.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. I'm I couldn't agree more with you about that. I think it's a perfect example of what happens when we go through a big grief or a big loss or a big trauma in life is oftentimes what we were I'm trying to find the words for this. I read a book by a medium recently about loss in various different ways, and something he said is that we become so accustomed to our life in so many ways. We get up the same way, we go to work the same way, we come home the same way. We do it a lot more than we think, and we're almost on autopilot all the time. But when we go through a loss or trauma, all of a sudden we get knocked off that course really harshly, and all of a sudden it becomes, well, what's my life now, or who am I at this point, or what have I been neglecting within myself, or
Yeah.
how am I not showing up for myself or others in certain ways? You begin to really question the deep, deep core of who you are. And a lot of people are very scared to go there, by the way, because it's going to challenge beliefs, it's going to challenge thoughts, it's going to challenge mindsets that you have, and it's uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable place. But it's a place where I think there's a lot of beauty there because we can shed those parts of ourselves that no longer exist or serve us, and make room for that more heart-centered place that we all should be. You said it really well. Love is something very hard to do on this planet for whatever reason, but in spirit, it's all that exists. There is no negativity up there. There's not.
Yeah, and when you experience that, you can't go back. So, like what I shared today is you may not understand it, but if you've experienced it, you will know it. You can't not understand.
Well, Terri-Ann, that brings me to my next question for you, which is how do you hope to help people with your story in the book?
Mm. I think for me, when Anthony passed, I had never known anybody that had lost a child. I had a couple of miscarriages, early on when before I had my daughter. And that was totally different than me losing him at 27 for me. But I had never met anybody that had lost a child, like a physical child now. So it was like I felt alone. And I want people to know that you're not alone. And just because I felt alone, it didn't mean I was alone. I was surrounded by my entire family, but I still felt alone in my grief and my journey. But you're never alone, and they're always there. So I want people to know that, by this project and many projects from this book, is that you have the ability to connect with your loved ones always. And even though you think that they can't hear you, they can hear you, even if you may not be able to hear, see, feel, or know them. They are there. Like they're right here. They're not like out there. They're not out there. They're right here. It's right here.
That's a hard thing for a lot of us to wrap our minds around, particularly when, maybe we've gone through grief, but we just haven't been in that environment to learn those concepts yet, or even been introduced to it yet as an idea. And I certainly was on the fence of those things many years growing up, but when I went through losing my grandfather the way I did, losing my son the way I did, and I had dreams like you had of Anthony, and I said, there's got to be more to this life. There's got to be more than just right here on this planet where we live. And I can't help but say that I can look back and tell you this now. I couldn't tell you this 3 or 5 years ago, but I do know there's a different realm out there for us. This is not the end of our life here on Earth. That's not. It's the beginning of something bigger. And when
Yeah.
we can allow ourselves to know that our loved ones, like you said, are right beside us, they never left us. They're just here in different form.
Yeah, one thing I always say is the world is so much more than what you just see with your two eyes.
I couldn't agree more with you about that. I saw something interesting last week that we can only see and hear in a certain spectrum of
Yes.
light and sound. And that made me sit there and say, if that isn't proof that there's more than we can actually see and observe and feel and hear, I don't know what is, because that means there's a whole other side of this life or universe or, whatever you want to call it, spirit. There's so much more out there we just don't know.
Yeah.
And we're eventually one day we will be in that place where we can eventually see those parts of life. And I have a belief now because I did a mediumship reading with Becky that's in our group. I did a reading with her, and Caden and my grandfather came through. And to be honest, I'm not scared of death anymore. I'm just
Mm.
not. I'm I'm in a new place, like you said about love. I love them, and when my time comes, I get to go see them again. I get to reunite with them. It's not a terrible thing like what society pushes on us. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around death and not wanting to die. People ask me, well, do you want to die? No, but there was a time that I did. I was suicidal in the beginning. It was so detrimental to me. My entire life was shattered that I had known. But I don't fear death anymore. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And it's just, shedding what this physical body is. Terri-Ann, it still will exist.
so I wanted to ask you too a big question. If you were to talk to yourself prior to losing Anthony and who you become today because of the gifts that Anthony gave you, what would you say to your younger self?
Wow. Probably, you don't know how hard it'll be, but you will get through it. You will do it. And every time I've got knocked down, I've gotten up. Anthony was the ultimate, to get knocked down, to knock me out. It almost took me out. It did almost take me out, honestly. But I was bigger than that. And, he always knew he had the bigger perspective than I had. I had the very limited perspective that this was me and my son. And now my life was over because I didn't have my son. But I do know now that even a grieving heart can find the light again. So, through my life and my sharing with Anthony, I would definitely tell my younger self that you'll do it.
Well, I think that's a beautiful message to leave people with today is that there always is still going to be hope. There is going to be a new future for you. And it's not going to happen in the next day or the next week and maybe the next month or the year. But when that time is right, you will know it and it will find you. And when that does find you, you're going to discover hidden gifts and lessons and blessings, as I like to call it, because we don't expect it. But when you do, you'll find the beauty in these moments and you'll be able to look back not from a place of pain but a place of love and empathy and understanding that what happened was so much bigger than you in the moment. And now you've been given this gift to go out into the world and give it back to others.
Yeah, that's
So,
truly beautiful.
yeah. Well, Terri-Ann, I'm so grateful that you were part of this book project with us. Your story about Anthony is absolutely beautiful, and I have no doubt this is going to help a lot of people who've either lost a child or lost somebody very close to them rediscover their own empowered grief journey and figure out how to have faith and how to find the hope in those situations, even when it feels bleak. And so I'm just very, very grateful for you to be a part of this today. I wanted to ask you, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
So I'm on Facebook, Terri-Ann Russell, Energy Practitioner, Sassy Soul Healing. That's my business. You can find me on YouTube and Spotify under Sacred Wellness with Terri-Ann Russell. And then my link tree has all of my stuffs, my book on Amazon. That's Linktree/Terri-Ann Russell.
I love that. Well, guys, I will have all of Terry Ann's links in the show notes. So make sure when you guys get done watching the episode, reach out and connect with her. She's been one of my amazing podcast guests from earlier this year, and she's definitely helped shape my spirituality in a lot of great ways. And so it's been a real blessing to connect with her. I also want to share with you guys again, when you go and read her book, make sure you look for her bio and her links on the back of the book. You guys can connect with her there. Reader chapter here about Anthony. It's very, very powerful in the book, and I have no doubt you guys will take away a few things to help you on your empowered grief journey. Well, Terry Ann, thanks so much for being on today, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.